I had the pleasure of coming across a video by Anton Daniels, and in the video he mentioned that he's read the Bible back and forth about 7 times, and he then proceeded to discuss the nature of women and their propensity to give misleading statements for the purpose of manipulation. And it reminded me of something that's very important, and that is that true knowledge, true wisdom comes from God. And many of us forsake our Bibles. We forsake the teachings of the Word for worldly understanding. But then when you get that worldly understanding through experience, and oftentimes through painful experiences, you realize just how right and exact the Word of God is as to the nature of humanity being both men and women. And so those of you all who have read my books, Rules to Live By, and they're available on Amazon, and you can verify what I'm saying, you realize that in my 700 some odd pages of writing, I took a deep dive into the Holy Bible, and it required years of study. Now, I've always been Christian, I've always been a Southern Baptist, but it wasn't until my life experiences drove me to the Word of God that I really began to dig deep into the Word. And now, when I read my Bible, it takes on a whole nother meaning. Now, Brother Daniels, and shout out to Brother Anton Daniels, if you haven't read his page, or seen his page, or looked at his videos, you're missing out. He's a very wise young man, and I will probably not be overstepping my bounds by telling you that he himself will attribute his wisdom and his growth and his success to his knowledge of the Word. Some of you all, we venerate the good brother Kevin Samuels, but many of you all don't even know anything about Kevin. You all don't know that he was a devout Christian, so much so that Kevin was a Sunday school teacher, which means he taught to both men and women, old and young. But more importantly, he knew his Word. Now, Kevin based a lot of his knowledge and his lessons, which were reaffirmed in the Bible. And I do the same things, and I believe Brother Anton was doing the same thing when he explained the nature of women and their propensity to tell misleading statements. He used the word lie, and that's appropriate also. I'll just refer to it as misleading. What I want to talk to you men about is the mistake that we make in modern relationships, in that we allow women to rule over us. We allow the feminine, the woman, to rule over us. Now, when I say rule, I mean in a dominant, domineering position, literally, whether it be through shame or manipulation, or guiding you with food, or physical pleasures in the form of sex, or even gratitude or ego, whatever it be. Either way, she is dominating you. And when you do that, and when you allow them to do that, women will despise you. Now, I want to caveat that. I want to insert a caveat in that. When I tell you that there is a way in which women can win, not through domination, but through submission. In the study of jiu-jitsu, we learn to beat stronger, more athletic, more ferocious opponents through the mastery of different grips and holds and techniques, and for the most part using your whole body as a tool, but more importantly, your mind, and conditioning your body to be able to be utilized as a weapon to cause a person to submit. But for the most part, submission or winning can occur in a submissive position, whether you're face down or whether your back is on the ground and they're on top of you in a dominant position. You learn to win. That is how a woman is supposed to win, not through domination, but through submission. The woman submits to the man and the man submits to God. So what happens when you have a situation where the woman is dominating the man and has forced the man to submit? What you have is something that's antithetical to Christianity. And these notions, these modern day notions of female dominance stem from feminism. And so when they say that feminism is here to fight the patriarchy or it's anti-patriarchal, the truth is it's anti-Christianity. It is truly the devil's work. What I want you to do is look at the modern day Black American woman, the modern day feminist. Look at what Black American women do. They literally dominate their men. They've come to the point to tell you that it's not the man that runs the Black community, but the woman that runs the Black community. They will say that we are the backbone of the Black community. They take the children from the men, and you see what's happened as a result of that. They even have a movement where they so-called decenter the man. And you see what that's done to the Black community. In fact, if you look at the origins of feminism, many of its earlier leaders were occult. And so when we look at the situation where you have Black American women stepping away from the cult and many of them professing that they are witches, literally, it should it should give rise to some alarm. Nevertheless, the whole point of feminism is to remove the man as the head of the household, because again, the man symbolizes God in the household. And so by removing the man from the household, you remove God, which is the goal of feminism. To do what, though? To empower women. To empower women to control man. And what happens when women have control? Let's look throughout time in history. When women have control, what do they do now? Let's look at current statistics now. Women are the bigger abusers, or the biggest abusers of people who are under their control. When they are put in charge of the elderly, they have a higher rate of abuse of the elderly. When they're put in charge of children, they have a higher rate of abuse of children. And these are the facts. Now, I'm not saying men are perfect. I understand male nature and I understand female nature. Male nature is what? We can be builders. We can go and build beautiful and wonderful things and create a society. And we also can be destroyers of society. It depends on the avenue that we take. On the flip side, women can be nurturers, but they can also be cruel when they abuse their authority. You see? And if you don't believe me, look at feminism. Feminism went from being something where women wanted rights and equal rights, allegedly, and now you see that they want superior rights. They want superior rights to the wealth. They don't necessarily want equal work. They want equal outcomes. They want superior rights to the children. They don't want to share the children, per se. They want dominant custody of the children. In a relationship, they don't want to go half until it's time for a divorce. They want you to do all the work, and then when it's time for divorce, they want to take the majority of your wealth and move on. What does that tell you? That tells you that they want superior rights when they're empowered. And the question you have to ask yourself is, where did this come from? And I know I started off with the Bible, And Christianity, specifically the Bible, because, you know, Jesus didn't call himself a Christian. And I know there's some people in here who are going to say, well, you know, you're talking about the white man's religion. This is to the black people. This is to the so-called woke blackity blacks. You're lying. Because number one, that Holy Bible didn't originate in Europe and is not a white man's religion. It is at best a Middle Eastern religion. But the most important thing you need to understand is that what is now known as Christianity was on the African continent 1,000 years before it hit Europe. So how can you even refer to this as the white man's religion? You have Ethiopian Christians right now in Ethiopia. They have something called the Ethiopian Bible. So anybody telling you that Christianity is somehow part of some racist notions that come out of Europe, and therefore if you listen to it or you adhere to the word of our ancient scholars who are largely African, then you're somehow part of the problem or you're somehow brainwashed. They themselves are the devil, because they're lying, and then therefore they are of their fathers. You know them by their deeds. Nevertheless, what does your Bible say in Genesis 3:16? Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. Now, to put this in context, this is related to the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And as you all know, Eve was seduced by the serpent and was convinced to bite the forbidden fruit, and she did it. And then she turned around and convinced Adam, who was given the commandment not to eat of this particular tree, and he did it. And so both of them were cursed. Adam was made to toil and labor through the land. Eve was forced to suffer from labor of giving birth. Now, Satan had convinced them that they would learn knowledge. And this knowledge would do what? This forbidden knowledge. And God had told them not to do it, but they do it anyway. But there's one other aspect of the punishment she received. And it said, your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. And so we don't look at that. Women talk about, yeah, I was cursed out of Eve, and now I got to have these labor pains. It's almost jokingly the way people talk about it. You see? Now, this particular interpretation is often discussed in religious circles. What does that mean, he will rule over you? What does that mean, your desire will be for your husband? Some suggest that when they say the Bible, the scholars who wrote that, particularly your desire will be for your husband, it implies a deep longing for his companionship, intimacy, a desire for him being close to you, something that you won't have. You see? That's a positive way, I guess, of looking at that curse. But because it's a curse, we have to understand it's a punishment. If you did something against the Lord and he's punishing you, why would you think that there would be a positive aspect associated with that? Especially considering that Adam was punished in the form of he would have to labor and toil in the earth, and Eve would have to experience pain during childbirth. Of course, your desire will be for your husband has to be some sort of punishment. So we have to look at the interpretation in what some would consider a more realistic light. And in using that terminology, your desire will be for your husband, it could be interpreted as saying something to the nature of you will desire to control or dominate your husband. And what this interpretation suggests is that there's going to be a struggle for power and authority in the relationship. That's going to invariably lead to conflict, because you are a woman trying to dominate a man. and the man is supposed to be in a dominant position, and you're not trying to do it from a submission position. You're trying to force this man as a weaker vessel to do what you say do. And you willing to lie and cheat and steal and manipulate and shame and do all sorts of things you can. Now, if you look at that and you place it in the context of what we're dealing with today, we got a lot of women trying to dominate men. And you wonder why we have so many issues in the dating scene, in the marriage scene, why marriages are failing. That's because you men are allowing these women to rule over you. And it goes against your nature to allow a woman to rule over you. But when we look at the second part, for you guys who don't believe, and that's not convincing, look at the second part of that where it said, he will rule over you, right? It seems to me when you look at that and you take that in context with the first part, your desire will be for your husband and he will rule over you. When you take those two together, it's introducing a hierarchy of a hierarchical structure or a power dynamic, if you will, in the relationship between men and women. And it implies that the husband will have authority over the woman, right? Why? Because now that she has this true knowledge, this forbidden knowledge, this is who she gonna be. And so we need this man to be in charge of her, to keep her nature in check, to keep that cruelty in check. And her job is to fight against it. And your job is to never let her dominate you. Now, a lot of so-called feminists don't like that. But again, remember where they're coming from. Remember what their whole goal is. Remember, in the context of Christianity, or feminism is not anti-patriarchal, but anti-Christian. Of course, they would want to dominate the man because that is the burden that's been placed on them by God for defying his word and biting the fruit that was forbidden to them. And now that they are cursed with this knowledge, this is what's necessary to keep society intact. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, because the feminists use this to say, well, this is why the Bible is oppressive to women. And, you know, you got to understand that was the cultural context. That was the culture at the time. So, of course, they would write that in there to support their position, blah, 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 blah. Of course they would. But the truth is, we're really just talking about nature. We're really just talking about the nature of human beings. We're talking about the nature of human beings and why man has his position and his role and why women have their position and their role. Because nature arises and society reflects that nature that exists already. Now, again, when you think about feminism, when you think about the objects or objective of feminism, in that they want to control man, they want to control you, and you look at all these simps, and the society's full of simps, and what's happened to these societies full of simps. Hell, look at what's going on in Western countries right now. You don't think this is the devil's work? Well, I got some more notions I want to throw at you. And again, we are talking about men being men. Men being dominant, men being in control, and what happens when men aren't in control and when men allow themselves to be dominated by women because she looks good, because she's fine. You got her running you down to the store, running you down to the mall, paying for Birkin bags that you can't afford. The crime rate goes up during the holiday season because men are out there trying to get gifts for women, so that means they do need to do what? When they don't have the money, they need to rob and steal and commit crimes to get it. All this because instead of submitting to God, you want to submit to this woman. She's dominating you. And here's the thing, like I said, that's the devil's work. And when you look at the history of feminism and the history of these feminists, they have ties to the occult. Many of them were involved in practices like spirit, mediumship, and tarot card reading. And many of y'all don't even know that. See, we're not just talking about, when we talk about feminism, we're not just talking about a political battle. This is spiritual. And as I said, feminists view Christianity as representative of the patriarchy. At the end of the day, when you replace the patriarchy with Christianity, it all begins to make sense. It's the devil's work. Many of the original feminists were occultists. There's a professor out of Sweden. He wrote a thesis called The Satanic Feminism. And it suggests that some feminists from the late 1700s and 19th century, they saw Lucifer as a liberator. Look at the book. Read the book. That particular author goes on and suggests that feminism's historical narrative has been altered by women's studies groups in these colleges starting back in the 1970s because they realized that telling you the origins of feminism and what the real purpose wasn't palatable, so they kept it hidden. They kept it hidden. And that's where that term occult comes from, right? Occult simply means hidden or hidden history when it comes to the occult feminism or the hidden history of feminism. You see? But many of these same feminists, they were talking about the struggle, and many of them themselves were very influential. So how much struggling were they doing? I find it hard to believe that these women were oppressed anyway. Yeah, there are going to be incidents. But at the end of the day, you had a mixed group. Yeah, there was some women who wanted rights and they wanted for the betterment. But you had, some authentic people who were in the righteous place. But a lot of these people were opportunists seeking personal gain. Anytime there's a new movement that pops up, it always is going to attract people with these outer lying movements who want to come in and usurp. And that's what feminism suffer with. But again, women struggle. They struggle with the desire to dominate men. That's what they do. You see? And until you curb that in your woman, if you are one of these foolish men who allow your woman to dominate you, guess what? She's going to be unhappy and you're going to be unhappy. That's why you have to maintain your integrity. That's why you have to plant your feet in the ground and stand on the things that you believe in. This is where your integrity comes in. See, the happiest individuals right now are the ones that embrace their traditional roles. When you lean into your masculinity as a man, you're better off for it. That's why when you passport bros go overseas and you get to be around feminine women, and which allows you to embrace your masculinity, you're so much happier. That's why I tell the brothers, you never really come back. On the flip side, the happiest women are the ones who embrace their femininity. They're the ones that didn't go out and try to get the corner office, and now they're 55 years old with a couple of divorces, no kids, or 55 years old with kids that don't have anything to do with them, as opposed to the grandma who's 55 years old who's bouncing babies on her lap. Those women are happy. And there are studies that demonstrate that women are happier when they're playing those roles. That's why this whole movement of women trying to get back to traditional roles is rising. But men are like, no, it's not happening. But again, there's less confusion. People are happier. And this is not the first time that society has had to deal with this. When you look at some of these ancient mythologies, when you look at stories, look at Lilith, who was allegedly Adam's first wife according to ancient Jewish tradition. What was her issue? She rebelled against Adam because she did not want him to rule over her. They say what? She was the devil's wife, right? Something like that. But bottom line is, she wanted Adam, she refused to submit to Adam. And that's just another story traditionally of females challenging male dominance. And so we have the same struggles throughout history. It's the same struggles that's denoted in that Bible that they tell you not to read. It's the same struggle. And what happens when you submit to the will of woman as a man? See, it's not just about a political, this is a spiritual battle. We fight not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. And that's what you're dealing with. And this is why you have the same spirit of conflict and competition that has influenced the gender dynamics, not just at this time, but across time. And when you understand the historical context, then it begins to make sense. Then these contemporary gender relationships begin to make sense. It's the age-old struggle. But again, the whole point of this discussion here in my backyard is to remind you men that you cannot let women dominate you. You cannot let your woman dominate you because she will hate you. You cannot let her rule over you because she will hate you, irrespective of the crap test. And some people call them SHI, T test. No matter what sort of shaming language she's doing or using, you can't let her control you. You can't let her dominate you because she'll lose respect for you. She'll lose admiration for you, admiration. And then once that happens, it's over. All you simps out there who think that by appeasing women and telling them what they want to hear, you think they respect you? No. They're using you as a tool to help convince other men that they should also allow women to dominate them. But at the end of the day, those same women will attack those simps. Look at the famous simps that we have. These same men that go out of their way and violate their own integrity, if you will, to go out of their way and justify some of the actions of these women. We have some very famous ones in the black community. You all can list their names in the comment section. You know who I'm talking about. Women don't even respect a man who is a pushover. They will tell you, I don't like nice guys. Yet they still try to push you and dominate you to make you soft and compliant. In other words, turn you into a nice guy. A sucker. And when you look up the Latin definition of nice, it's not a good thing. It basically translates to a fool. That's what you are when you allow women to dominate you and control you, fellas. You become a fool, and they don't respect you. You don't respect yourself, and any gains that are attributed to you being nice early on are taken away from you in the end. But society as a whole, fellas, You men in general have become too compliant. You've sacrificed your morals, your integrity, what you stand on as men, what you know to be true as a man and is natural to you, to be compliant with women, and they don't respect you. And now, as a woman does, they're pushing the issue to see how far they can go with it. How far can I push it? Well, can I get these men to wear dresses? Can I get these men to be the pretty one in the relationship? If we use enough shaming technique, we can get these men to stop acting like men. At this point, they have something called toxic masculinity, which basically vilifies normal aspects of being man. Basically, normal male behavior is pathologized and treated as though it is some sort of deviant behavior. This is what they're doing to you. You all are just like dolphins and seals at SeaWorld, jumping through hoops and performing tricks. And you don't have the sense enough to recognize that this is exactly the opposite of what you're supposed to be doing as a man. Read your Bible. Because like my good brother Anton Daniel says, not only will women lie, but they will also manipulate you. And they know it. Other women know it. That's why they don't trust each other. They see you men for the fools that you are. You're stupid. And I say that again. Men are stupid. Very stupid. And it takes years to begin to recognize the true nature of women. Yes, men, and I'll say this again, I agree, men have their nature too, but we're not talking about men right now. Men keep other men's nature in check. That's what we do. You want to come destroy? I'm going to protect my land, my people, my property, my village, my tribe, my country from those men who want to destroy. There are men that stand on the line to do that. But what does a man do when he has a woman who's trying to control him? Who's trying to dominate him? Not just control, but dominate him and control him. Because you, as I said earlier, you could be submissive and win, but that's not what the modern day woman wants. That's not what Lilith wants. That Lilith spirit. And you men have to be wary of that. And when we have a nation or a nationwide or worldwide system of feminism that has turned Western women who, under the auspices of giving them rights, because that's all we've done in the Western world, is basically take the restrictors off women and giving them these so-called rights, and not equal rights, but the right to be superior. Even in a court of law, we don't have due process. If a woman says you touched her inappropriately 30 years ago, then you did it. And you're guilty as far as society is concerned until proven innocent. And even after you've proven innocent, people will still look at you with a jaundiced eye. So women's rights are now superior to men. And this is our fault because we let it get out of control. We allow women to dominate us not only on an individual level, but on a national level. In societies that we built, maintain control. And I've already explained what happens when you give women power and control unchecked. It's your job to check that woman. What happens when she gets authority over you? What does female nature say? They become cruel. They don't become caretakers. They can do that when they're under control, but they become cruel, just like men build. But when they're left out of control, they become destroyers. That woman is supposed to civilize that man. You give a man who normally destroy and terrorize, you give him a wife and some children and some responsibilities and something to live for, he's civilized now. When you give a woman who is out of control, who is cruel or could be cruel, you give her something to take care of and give her some parameters in which she can operate, she does what she's supposed to do. That's society. That's how society works. It balances like that. But now We out of balance. Now there is no balance in Western societies. I'm not just talking about the United States or Canada, all of Western society. And it's a problem. And that's why Western society is on the demise. That's why, as backwards as we think some of these so-called third world countries are, those same countries who have religious doctrine that they adhere to, places like, some places in South America, Central America, Africa, many of the Middle Eastern countries, where women's nature is kept in check because of their religious beliefs, their strong, devout religious beliefs. The societies aren't deteriorating. But here, you have chaos. So fellas, don't let women control you. You figure out what it is that God wants you to do, and you move towards that aim. You find a woman who can help you, not dominate you. And at the point where she attempts to dominate you, you make sure you put a hold to that. You do it with your voice, and you do it with your actions. And if the woman is out of control and refuses to accept submission to you, then you move on. You don't have to put hands on her. You don't have to do anything like that. But you have to stand your ground and be men. Otherwise, society crumbles. We don't want that.